Start it up now. All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Get the Mic, the only show where your host on the left, Owl,
And your host on the right, Brock.
dissect fiction for its mythological significance. On this episode, we are talking about Dragon Ball as usual, and in particular, episode 103, which is called The Terror of King Piccolo. But before we get started, if you like what you hear, please give us a like. Hit that like button. Get that subscribe button, red subscribe button down below. Go and smash it so you can stay up to date with our latest videos. We also upload Mondays and Thursdays on YouTube, Rumble Tuesdays and Fridays. So please view us on our other platforms as well. But Brock, I think without further ado, we can go ahead and get straight into it.
Yeah.
This is kind of a special edition. It's a live edition that we don't have chat up, but it is still a live edition. So we hope you enjoy this show. The first thing we see, let's go ahead and get right into it, is that as Goku charges Tambourine, he is enraged at the murder of Krillin. As Goku sees his Dragon Ball, or rather his grandfather's Dragon Ball, he realizes that this must be the person who killed Krillin. Person, demon, whatever. Tambourine gives Goku a recap of his murder of Krillin, including the glee he felt in killing him. And so we get to see a flashback here of Krillin's attempt to stave off the monster and how he ultimately falls. So there's several important parts that I want to mention here. As you can see in the clips, Goku, when he recognizes Tambourine, it's not that he recognizes this as the monster who killed Krillin, but also his tail bristles up, right? I don't know if we've ever really seen that before.
Rarely. I think it normally shows it as a gag. You know, if he's getting electrocuted or he's being surprised by something and it stands up. But I don't know if we've actually seen him in anger, sort of bristling like that. I guess bristling is the way to put it. And this is something to say about the state that Goku is in now. He's essentially being cast back out into the world without food, hungry, to face the arbiter of this new higher level of chaos.
Well, it's not the same world.
Exactly.
This is like a new world that Goku has just been thrown into. And it's interesting too, because in the next couple of episodes we're going to see a whole new area of the dragon world that we haven't seen before.
Yes.
And all of that is significant to the story.
But I think that his tail being like that, we see that he wants to kill him, right?
He is definitely wielding malice at this time.
Right. Well, it's sort of like that he's indulging in that humanity and that sort of bestial nature that is attached to him, mm-hmm. which is that he would take pleasure in causing pain to this guy, right?
And that's why his tail visibly grows, let's say, by bristling up, right? And it only dawns on him though. He only like elevates his state of emotion even further when he sees his grandfather's Dragon Ball. And I can't actually remember in the fight or not, but we might see. If I think Tambourine might hit Goku with the Dragon Ball, actually.
Yeah, he hits him over the head with it.
Yeah. And so this idea and the fact that the 4-star ball is the first thing to be taken from Goku, which, right, if we go back to the symbolism behind the 4-star ball being that of the ancestral spirit of Grandpa Gohan, his as in Goku's reverence towards the ancestral spirit in the beginning of the story, all of that stuff, and his journey to the underworld to reconvene with his father and improve himself in order to redeem the idea of fathers across dimensions.
Yeah, and this is sort of a blindness to the attitude of his father, right? What his father would want him to do, how he would want him to behave. He's not necessarily partaking in the pattern the way that he should, right? He hasn't nourished himself. He hasn't been responsible. He didn't listen to Roshi. And now we see it sort of manifest here in the sense that he doesn't have the 4-star ball with him anymore, meaning that he's lost this connection to his spiritual father.
Do you think that is the reason why he gets so emotionally invested when he sees the ball?
Yeah, it's something that centers him with it being that 4-star ball, right? We had talked a little bit before about sort of what the 4 generally represents in the ability to center yourself, and this is a center of, we see from the very beginning of the first episode that this is the thing that sort of centers Goku, that gives him an orientation so that when he's out in the world, out in chaos or in the woods or wherever it is, that he's still oriented towards goodness, you know?
And that's how he was able to orient himself towards the greatest goodness he could conceive of in the Red Ribbon Army arc.
Right, and so it goes hand in hand with the murder of Krillin that Goku has lost that, and he's sort of lost that orientation and needs to go and sort of rediscover what that means.
Well, I was going to say, with Roshi stepping down, right, with this world being devoid of a fatherly protector spirit,
this is back in the hands of the chaotic.
And so now we're in that chaos, right? And so Goku's in a chaos-based world more so.
Right.
And the last thing I want to mention here is the recap of Krillin's murder. So Krillin fights as well as he can, right? But it seems that Tambourine takes a lot of glee in his domination of the fight.
He is definitely playing with him, right?
Mm-hmm. And then Krillin, I think he even says, like, I'm not going to let you take that Dragon Ball or whatever, right? And eventually we know that, and I mean, it's pretty much told to Goku here as well, that Tambourine kills Krillin with a single kick, right? And he
kicks him directly in the forehead with his heel. It's like he steps down on him. And he plays around with him in that sense where he hangs from the ceiling upside down and mocks him. And whenever Krillin says, no matter how strong you are, I'm not going to let you take this, he stomps down on his head, stomps on his forehead, and that immediately kills him.
Well,
right.
Let's say, and that's like where his third eye would be.
Exactly.
It's like right there. This is too much malice for you, Krillin. And it's immediately injected there, and then it's done.
Right, it's a weak spot for Krillin.
Right, and so because he is unenlightened so far.
Right.
And so that's kind of where Tambourine can easily dispatch Krillin. And so that's the first set there. And then we then we see, or I wrote it correctly. I should have just said it that way. After hearing how Krillin died, Goku and Tambourine clash, while Roshi and the Goku gather Krillin's remains in the meantime. Tambourine bashes Goku down, only for our hero to use the Kintoon, to get back into the fight. Using his tongue, Tambourine catches Goku in midair and then destroys the Nimbus with his breath attack. As a last resort, Goku tries to use the power pole to stay in the fight, but he is cast down into the forest, Tambourine flying down after him, and he seemingly finishes Goku off. So a couple things here. The fight itself it's interesting because Goku keeps saying that if he was full, if he was sustained, if there was, and it's almost like this, right? If there was a paternal spirit in this world that I knew I could rely on,
or orient myself toward, nourish myself by acting out the way that they are,
then you wouldn't stand a chance, right? And it's true.
Right.
If the hero is able to act out his spirit, then demons like this don't stand a chance. But
precisely. But we saw already that Piccolo's goal is to stamp out that propensity.
The ability to be nourished.
Yeah.
Let's say. And so that whole clash there, and the whole thing that Tambourine keeps saying that Goku's all talk and he mocks him for it and things like that. We know that Goku's spirit is stronger than that of this creature, but at this time, Goku is very malnourished. Even though he's basically spent all of his spirit in the ascension of the hierarchy that was the Tenkaichi Budokai, which ultimately comes out to a world that is totally different than the one they left it when they entered the tournament.
Right. And I think this is a great representation of that idea with Goku being so hungry that he can't face this chaos. It's Roshi was not able to be the one to nourish him, and Krillin was not there and was separated from him. So Goku has gone he's gone unnourished. He's gone without being sort of rejuvenated after going through that process. And part of that reason is that there was no one left to rejuvenate him in spirit after he had gotten that far, because he's essentially at the top, right? And now he has to learn to nourish himself again in a totally foreign, chaotic experience.
Well, now he has to learn how to not only integrate chaos, but let's say malicious chaos and his own shadow into a way that can actually progress his being. And in this, we can see he's not on that path. He's not adopting the way that he needs to act in this way. So
that's why really he's able to destroy the Nimbus with this breath attack, right?
Yeah.
Because Goku, first off, we saw that he sprinted all the way to a cliffside before he started using the Nimbus to try to find or to catch up with Tambourine here. Then Tambourine destroys the Nimbus out from under him, sort of to say, like, you don't have a path, like, you don't know the way anymore. It's a test that Goku has failed.
Mm-hmm.
So then he uses the power pole, right?
It's more so that than, let's say, the last time the Quinton was destroyed was Red Ribbon arc,
right?
Where it's destroyed with a rocket. But that's to say that the malice Goku is facing is so unknown that his path forward
becomes unclear. Right.
In this, it's more of Goku's mistake that makes him lose the Nimbus. It's more of Goku's adherence to his bestial and emotional side, his anger, that leads to the loss of the Nimbus.
Right. It seems to me like a weakness that he leaves open that then Tambourine is able to exploit, right?
Mm-hmm. And so it is gone, and Tambourine thinks that the battle is over at that point because Goku's been relying on the Nimbus to keep him in the fight. After all, they're in the middle of the air. And as a last resort, Goku uses the power of the ancestral spirit, as limitless as it is, to do one last attack on Tambourine. However, Tambourine, being a spirit, or let's say an appendage rather, of King Piccolo, is not at all affected by the idea of ancestry in that way. And so he dodges it and then javelin tosses the power pole down with Goku into the forest. In the forest, Goku seemingly is still alive. He calls out to Tambourine and says, Krillin's murderer. And then Tambourine takes sadistic glee in finishing off Goku.
He tries to punish him, essentially. He beats on him until he has given up rather than just killing him. And that's really the saving grace for Goku, is that he's able to engage in that pattern again, right? Instead of just being killed, this is another instance of Goku being able to take on the full malice of this being. And even though he's completely weakened and can't fight back against it, he can still take it into himself and then survive and continue to integrate it.
Right, and we're going to get to his survival in just a second, but
yeah, I
like how he's cast down into the forest, right? Into a forest. There with let's say an unorderly place, a more natural place, right? It's almost as if it's symbolically indicating what we were saying about Goku being cast into a chaotic world.
Right, this 1-2 punch and destroying the Nimbus and casually just throwing him down and throwing the power pole, the Noibo, down after him is that. It's basically he encounters the first chaos that he can after the fight, and this is what it does. It takes away the path, and it takes away the ability to elevate your own spirit based upon the paternal, more the familial paternal spirit, right?
And so he's back basically almost in square one, like Garden of Eden, untamed lands, no civilization, no society, right? A chaotic world that he needs to rebuild order within. And that's how he's going to be able to nourish himself. And so but we'll get there in a minute because I do want to mention one last thing. Tambourine, when the battle is going on, Tambourine mocks Goku, saying that he's part of the demon clan. He cannot be beaten by a human. And I just wanted to mention that because it is an interesting idea here that we see. Piccolo is something that Roshi has basically said cannot be overcome by strength, right? Cannot be overcome in traditional means. And so the Mafaba, which we've heard, is not like a strength-based attack. It's not even a damaging thing to begin with. It can only trap. It cannot destroy, right? And that's kind of the crux of Mutaito's weakness, and the weakness of the Mafaba itself is that it doesn't destroy evil spirits. It can only contain them.
It can only restrain or define them, right?
And not to say that power of the ancestral father, or let's say the spiritual father, is a weak one. The spiritual father, let's say, can definitely contain evil, but it cannot destroy evil. And so we see like this is played out in multiple things.
Right. That's the limit case, right, that we've reached, which is the root of all evil, like evil in the heart of man. The spirit of the Father cannot defeat that inherently, right? It always persists, but it can define it.
Right. And so let's take Star Wars, Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader, which we've been talking about recently, so it's fresh on my mind. Darth Vader says, now the circle is complete. When I left you, I was but the learner, but now I am the master. And then they fight, right? And Obi-Wan, being the spiritual father, is able to contain that malice so that Luke and his friends can escape.
Right.
Right. It's that idea that it can only be contained, though, because there's only one archetype that's able to destroy that spirit, and it's the rejuvenating, the Logos spirit that is inhabited in Goku.
Right, within the hero.
And so it's a real, like, Roshi in a way understands this, and that's why he was really upset with Goku for leaving, let's say.
Right, because he wanted it to be his responsibility to contain it rather than it being a story of death.
Right. And the fact that this world just began anew, let's say.
Please allow me to take the responsibility that I need to now that the stakes have been changed, right?
Right, but Goku doesn't do that because he's emotionally involved and he makes that big mistake. So, and one last thing to get back to the demon clan thing. So the idea of demons, I wanted to get back to that because we're talking about how the Mafaba is not a damaging thing, it can only contain. And so the idea here is that demons are more powerful than humans at this point in Dragon Ball, the Dragon World, let's say.
Right.
There's not many people that are able to overcome demons. And it makes sense because demons are very, let's say, oriented on a specific demonic and unholy path, which can hardly and nary be overcome by the everyday regular person with many flaws. Like Bulma, for example, wouldn't be able to take out a demon.
Right. Demons traditionally have had relations to like fallen angels. You think of the clans of like Gog and Magog. All of those, the other that exists purely as like a malicious thing that tries to fight the good in people or stamp out the good in people. And it's a spirit that persists beyond the mortal realm, right? And this is what that is. This is a higher level spirit completely. So high that no mortal can, as far as we know, fight them at all.
Not with much success. The only ones we've known are Roshi and the Crane Hermit, which we've already seen.
Teamed up to essentially hold them back.
And that's like saying the perverse or antithetical. Actually, I don't know if I would say Crane was such that at the time. It was more like two burgeoning spiritual fatherly spirits like Krillin, let's say, teaming up to do something against the whole crew of Piccolo demons. But
right.
Yeah, I just wanted to get back to that for 1 second because yeah, and I mean demons or let's say even jinn in Middle Eastern mythology Um, they are on a level that is unfathomable to humans.
Right, and Jinn similarly are sealed in a container. And it is only a lot of times the story of a Jinn or a genie comes out to be someone takes it in foolishness and wishes for something that they don't fully understand, and then they have to pay for the consequences of their misguided wish that they have.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, this is the genie out of the bottle. This is that higher level spirit that should be contained.
And those Jinn, they allow that spirit, they allow that wish to happen intentionally so they can cause the person to suffer. Mostly, there's mostly evil Jinn.
Right. Now, they can be good, too. In a lot of mythology, there's sort of a split type of being where they can act benevolently or malevolently, right?
Yes. But, like we were saying, there's some parallels there. I just wanted to bring up Jinn, especially because,
especially with
rice
Pilaf,
cooker
right?
and
Yeah.
that, yeah. Oh, yeah. The wish you make sure it's a good one. So, let's move on, because I think we're going to get to Pilaf in just a second. But before we do, that night, the Go crew lament that Goku is still missing. Roshi tries to tell them that Goku has probably perished, but they are not quite ready to hear such things. Launch takes Krillin in her arms as they all head back to Kame House. Meanwhile, Tambourine reports back to Piccolo, giving him the Dragon Ball and reporting the death of Krillin and Goku. Lastly, the Pilaf game regret reviving this creature.
That's an understatement.
Yes. And so let's start at the beginning here. It's nighttime, and we rarely see nighttime in Dragon Ball, by the way. It's only used in specific instances, and this is like this is almost like the dawn of the new world right now.
Right.
Like we entered the sun went down when the tournament was ending, and it was continuing to go down. It was like almost gone when Goku was fighting Tambourine, and now it's finally done.
Right, and this whole idea is that nobody else knows that Goku's alive. We, the viewer, know that he's survived this, but it's like the sun is rising on a world without Goku, possibly, for all of these people.
Right, and it's that chaotic time, the nighttime, when things can change and things are amorphous and there's a lack of order.
Right.
And so it's in this time that Roshi decides to tell them all that Goku's probably not coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incumbent on the spiritual father to tell the truth. And so he has to tell them what really is the most likely thing to happen. However, what Roshi doesn't understand is that even at Goku's present power, he's not going to be... He could be destroyed by Piccolo, but not Tambourine. Tamborine's not strong enough to do that. And we'll get into that in just a second.
The reaction of Pilaf and the homies to the idea that Goku could be dead is very fitting as well, right?
It is. I really want to talk about that in just a second. Launch though. Launch here. She embodies what we've been talking about so much with her character, in the sense that she is the dualism of the maternal spirit and the feminine spirit, let's say, that needs to be around to nurture and keep in line the rebellious spirits of young men who are coming into their maturity, let's say. And so here she's actually the most affected by Krillin's death. She picks him up, and it's kind of an emotional moment.
Yeah, it's the feeling of a lioness that's lost a cub, right? Because she really is a mother figure to Krillin, and
even
so
more than Goku, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, Goku's been out in the world, but Krillin hasn't, and there's a real feeling of like this was a boy that was killed and innocent, instead of if Goku was killed, because Goku is worldly now. But Krillin hasn't instantiated himself out in the world yet, so there's that real feeling.
Goku has at least begun the process of losing his innocence.
Right. Krillin has not. He's only been playing the game this entire time.
And even in his best performance in the hierarchy, right, he was barely starting to ascend past playing the game when he fought Goku.
Right. So there is that feeling of like a mother losing her child between launch, and so we get to see blonde launch in the maternal role here because it's sort of like,
I think she's blonde for almost the rest, basically.
mm-hmm. And we hear this with blonde where she's sort of like, if
Well,
you
she
lose,
is
there'll be hell to
that
pay.
lioness, right? She is that lioness archetype almost.
Right.
Because we've seen she has teeth, right? She can defend her quote unquote babies. What did she do for Goku, right?
Right.
Like those really are her pseudo kids, this in the same way that they're Roshi's pseudo sons, right?
Right.
And it's just a really it's really a good thing to see that she's the one that picks him up. Like it could have easily been Tien, it could have easily been Bulma, but
Right.
it wasn't.
It specifically needed to be launch in this situation. Which, just further cements Launch as one of my favorite characters because she really is someone who, when push comes to shove, comes through to be this really strong character, right? Like, this is a side of Blonde Launch we've never seen, who is like a controlled, sad anger, who isn't overreacting, but is taking things their appropriate level of seriousness, Like, this is
she's
when...
not just, like, shooting up the place.
This is what she exists for, right?
Well, also, it's a big part, it's a big moment for Launch, too, because it's some of the first development that we see her integrating her blue launch side with her conscious blonde launch side.
Right.
Meaning, right, because we've talked about how blonde launch is the masculine half of the feminine that launch is.
Mm-hmm.
And her integration of the unconscious blue launch, and I think it's safe to say that blue launch is unconscious in more ways than one, because not only is she unconscious to Roshi's advances, right, but she generally is naive in the way that she acts. Blonde launch is not, and so when she's becoming her more realized self, of course she's going to remain blonde launch as her front, let's say, because that's the logos, and her integrating that blue part of herself here, we see she's taken a step in that direction, and so it's character development for Launch as well.
Not only that, but you think about more along the lines of what role does a mother play for a young man whenever he's stepping out of his adolescence, and she stops embodying that maternal spirit and becomes much more protective, tries to give advice, tries to protect him from mates that would lead him astray, all those types of things. And so that's why we see Launch does not go back to Blue Launch hardly at all, if at all, from this point on in the story, because the role that she needs to play in the world, because she is the mother of Goku and Krillin ultimately, is that.
Multiple reasons, because one, the danger in the world is real and needs to be handled in a real way, not an unconscious way, not to pretend that it doesn't exist.
Right. The seal's been broken on that.
Right, and Launch recognizes that. And two, because Launch is like that. Blonde Launch is becoming that maternal spirit that can be relied on well into age, right? Because what she can do for her children, let's say, is that she can kind of help them navigate this chaos in a way that, like you were saying, steering them away from the draws of, let's say, feminine temptation.
Sure.
And she does that in multiple ways. Like when we see how she treats Oolong and Roshi when they are lecherous, makes it so that Krillin does not have that blindness when he grows up.
Right, she acts as that example for him to carry into this phase.
Oh, we just need a whole launch episode.
Yeah.
Time for a 3-hour launch. Anyways, so just wanted to mention that moment. It's like, I don't know, 12 seconds she picks him up, but it's very important to the story.
Yeah, it definitely is.
And we see that like that Roshi understands this integration, and he's very serious and somber in this time, and so he's trying to keep this familial unit almost together.
Right.
And so he says that we need to have a memorial for Krillin, and that is where they leave off when they go back to Kame House. Now, one last thing that I want to mention too is that, and this is another instance of that, almost a lioness response from Launch, is that when they figure out that the roster had been taken, Oolong says, "Well, great, this has nothing to do with me." And Launch basically calls him an idiot.
She shames
says,
him.
"You're not the only one."
Yeah.
And so it's really good. It's really good characterization of Launch. And I mean, I don't know how many Dragon Ball fans actually know who Launch is, but whatever.
Most don't.
Terrible.
But yeah, before we move on, of course, we have...
Oh, we're not moving on. Yeah. We got to talk about Pilaf and the homies.
We do have Pilaf realizing his mistake for the first time here at the thought that Goku could have been killed by Piccolo, because he has to know that he cannot control Piccolo, right, in any way, because if Goku can't defeat him, he really can't hold Goku over Piccolo's head. And I think there's that part of him that wanted this to be something that weakened Goku, or was something that a tool that he could use, right? And the whole idea that Goku could be defeated at all proves to him that he's in a world he doesn't know anything about.
Well, I was also going to say that he is subconsciously cognizant of the fact that his spirit is inferior to the heroic spirit.
Right. He's always aware of it.
He's always been aware of it. And so it's almost like a Cain and Abel thing, right? Like it's almost, he's impotent Cain. He's Cain who can't kill Abel but wants to.
So he introduces death into the picture.
Right. But what I was saying was, like, he can't kill Goku himself. But subconsciously he knows it's actually not right to. Pilaf has a conscience. Like, he there are things that he does that he knows are wrong, but he does them anyway.
He's not evil, he's just foolish.
That's why he's foolish, right? And that the unholiness adopted in doing that, the arrogance in thinking that Pilaf's spirit is such that he can control Piccolo, the deceit, right, lying to himself, saying that this is a good idea, and the resentment, like, I'm doing this because F the world, basically. I can't do it my own way, so I have to do it this way.
Right, if I can't have the world, nobody can.
And so it's really creates that unholy trinity, and we see that over multiple iterations of Pilaf throughout. In fact, we actually have 3 iterations of Pilaf, right? The first iteration he has, where he is in the desert castle, right? Where he has adopted that ego fortress, let's say, of arrogance.
Right, the palace.
Then he starts lying to himself, indicating that he's on his own path by making the flying fortress, which is the deceit. Then when he's defeated by Goku, even after they plan for his weakness...
Actually, he's defeated by Red Ribbon in that flying fortress, right?
Yeah,
Which is that he is confronted with a certain malicious spirit that's higher than his, and he still doesn't learn from it, right?
Right. And so, well, even that, saying that, like, his instantiation is able to soar through the clouds unfettered because of his greatness, let's say, right? That deceit comes crashing down, right? Let's say. And
again, similar to this, it's brought down by a higher level malicious force than himself.
Yes, but he didn't summon this one.
Right.
He kind of gets an.
But he was taught, that was his first clue, not to summon something like this.
Yes, he gets an intonation that, like, this is not a good way to go about it. So he actually does try something else.
Right.
He gives it an honest effort, which is his best and closest effort that he's gotten so far, in trying to exploit Goku's weakness in his tail.
Right, he spies on him, finds about the tail, makes the exoskeletons.
But when all of that fails, right, when all of his sacrifices to God are unaccepted, that's when he gets the resentment and says, if I can't rule this place, no one will.
Exactly.
So then he goes down into the depths of the unknown to fish out the true seed of destruction in the world that was placed there by we don't know who yet, because we'll get there eventually.
Very soon. Well, I mean, we already saw in the last episode that he was put in by the Mafuba.
Yes.
But it's more complicated than that.
Oh, I was talking about.
Right. But yeah, we see the arrogance displayed by his keeping his ego, even though it was taken from him the last time, because his ego's been struck down essentially twice before he tries to just exploit Goku's weakness. Right? He's got two palaces, one in the desert and one in the sky that he makes, and both of them are destroyed. The first one by Goku, and the second one by a malicious force outside of himself. So he knows that Goku's stronger than him, and he knows that the worldly malicious spirit that he could call on is most likely stronger than he is. He's experienced it. It's torn his whole ego down. Then he thinks that he can outwit Goku and that he can manipulate his inherent weaknesses because he is good. But he realizes that Goku has become so good.
He can reason it, right?
Yeah.
He's pretty much, again, because I would say that's another ego. It's 3 ego deaths that he has, all of which cause one domino to fall, making him adopt an unholy spirit. And
right.
So the ego that happens in the last is him figuring out, right, doing the let's say intellectual work of figuring out the weakness to Goku being his connection to that bestial ancestral. It's almost if someone was using someone's ancestry as a bludgeon against them, the sins of the father, right? Even though we're not quite aware of what that means yet, and Pilaf isn't either. But as a foolish adversary, he's able to exploit it, but it's not actually there. And the whole fact that he's reached that level of understanding with no. Let's say he's reached that level of understanding like Cain giving offerings and realizing they're not accepted, that it's at that point where he's like, well, trying doesn't work.
Right, like this time I made all the right sacrifices.
Yes.
For everything that he understands, this should have worked. Right? He should have been able to grab Goku by his tail. He should have been able to manipulate that weakness. But it was the only way that he knew about it, because of the way that he's tied to Goku, was for Goku to know about it. And so just by that simple fact, Goku integrates it as he has integrated the knowledge of it as well. And so then it's not something that he can use against Goku because, again, he's an archetypal fool.
Well, remember,
he can't grasp him fully.
There.
Yeah.
It's not there because it's removed by the ancestral spirit of Gohan.
Right. I would say it's all causally linked, right?
Yeah.
As Goku comes into contact with that ancestral spirit and it gets integrated and removed from him, that is what enables the fact, like not literally, but in a cosmic sense, that's why Pilaf is able to see it, right? Because he's sort of this shadow. He's the fool of Goku, right? He's like this antagonist fool that's always tied to Goku. And so with Goku having an awareness of it, it sort of gives that awareness in a cosmic sense to the fool to do with as he will. But of course, he doesn't understand that the purpose of it is for the hero to have it integrated and to grow. And so he doesn't understand what it means to integrate the excess, let's say, because he never does it. So it doesn't make sense to him that Goku wouldn't have the weakness anymore and that there was no excess of him to grasp onto.
And but to him, he thought he made all the right
exactly
decisions. And so here, now he finally, and as you were saying earlier, once he hears that Goku is dead, he's realized that something better than him has already been defeated by something weaker than Piccolo. And that idea terrifies him. He realizes he's basically at the mercy of King Piccolo.
This doesn't necessarily stop his arrogance because of how foolish he is.
And his deceit. He keeps saying, oh, Piccolo is going to give us half the world.
A third.
A quarter.
Yeah. And this is...
his arrogance, his deceit.
But now he can at least have...
exactly.
Like, it's turned to ash in his mouth, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of like... He's like a dog that's been chasing a car. It's like he doesn't know what he's going to do if Goku's not there.
And he's like, oh, this car's way bigger than me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, right, exactly. And we get to see Pilaf and the homies start to second guess themselves.
Yeah.
And so we get to our last part here, where Piccolo, in a fit of paranoia, sends Tambourine forth to kill all of the martial artists in the world. first he kills Choppa-O in his martial arts school, and then he goes to kill Pomput in front of a packed arena of fans. Now, Choppa-O's students try to defend his honor afterwards, and again, Tambourine, he takes glee in killing the rest of them. And that is to say, right, that this isn't, this is so much like to, in Pinocchio, we watched Pinocchio a couple days ago, and this is so much like the fox and the cat at the Red Lobster Inn with the coachman, right? Because Tambourine is not that which tricks you to gain a leg up in the world, but that which will consume you and have glee doing it.
He's one of the demons.
He's a demon, and so he takes glee in destroying not only Choppa-O in front of his students, demoralizing all of them, but then afterwards killing all of them as well.
It's public displays. He does, whenever he fights Choppa-O, he does it in front of all of his students, and then his students still keep the faith, so he just kills them instead, right? So this is a continuation as it goes on to Pomput doing it in front of the world stage, what Piccolo does. What we saw him do in the flashback, which is that he wants to create a condition where no heroes would rise up.
Which is exactly the point, right? Because let's say his students did not attack. It would prove that they were so demoralized that they are cowards.
Right.
In which case, they're no longer needed to be worried about.
If they do attack,
so
their examples.
It's a win-win for Piccolo in this regard, because the adversarial spirit can exploit the suffering of the world to their own ends. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. We're seeing the suffering being put as a demoralizing amplification to the world, especially with Pomput's fight, right? Which Pomput defeats a guy easily because he's a champ. And then, why can't I see this?
Oh, there we go. Let me see.
Oh,
How's this instead? Oh, I'm still in the red.
I can move you down a little. All right. Back to what we were saying. So his killing of Pomput, he waits until the match is over. And then he flies down slowly, right, and lets Pomput say things, right? He lets the crowd think that Pomput has a chance.
Right.
And then he kills him.
And then he just casts him down.
And then the crowd goes silent, and all we hear is Tambourine laughing in glee that not only has he killed a martial artist, but he's demoralized, let's say, 20,000 people.
Exactly. That's what this entire process is all about.
He's gotten them to never rise up as heroes.
Man, why am I so dank? Like, even just back here, I'm going in the red.
Unplug and replug, I guess. Anyways, that actually brings us to the end of the episode. So if you want to bring us home here, Brock.
I think this is a good episode. It sets us up to see. Yeah, I'm much better now. This sets us
I'll
up
turn
to
you
sort
back
of
up.
see the recalibration of the world. We see the destruction of the Nimbus. We see Goku being cast down into the forest and defeated. We see that everyone is coping with the idea of a world where Goku could be killed. That being all of the heroes and Pilaf. And we see the first instantiation of now in this time in the quote-unquote future, you could say, of Piccolo starting his demoralization campaign towards the heroic spirit.
Or his reign of terror, let's say.
Right.
And it doesn't even have to be towards the heroic spirit. Wielding terror in that way naturally, let's say, demotes or pervades the idea of the hero rising up.
Right.
Because think of, like, let's say the French Revolution, where the reign of terror prevented people from rising up against the council because of the guillotine. And that idea, the rule of fear, the terror of King Piccolo is what's starting to be instantiated here.
Right, the beginnings of it,
Yes.
which is going to get much, much worse.
So if you're a fan of getting much, much worse, please join us in future episodes. I think this is a good place to leave off. If you liked what you heard, please give us a like. Just hit that red subscribe button for us. We upload new episodes Mondays and Thursdays to YouTube, to Rumble Tuesdays and Fridays. So be sure to catch us on those platforms. I think that's pretty much it. So I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
We hope you guys have a good night.
Yoo-hoo! I'm back! Maybe he's asleep. So, you'll train me now?
Well, let's begin that lesson, shall we? I want you to ask that girl there if she'd like to go on a walk with me.
How is that training?
You want to learn or not?
Lady, I'm supposed to ask you. She said she won't walk with you.
What do you mean?
Well, she said she'd have a much better time if you guys went for a swim instead.
It's too good to be true.
What now?
Well, now I go accept her invitation. Do your legs hurt 'cause you've been running all through my dreams?
I don't have legs.
So you're a mermaid, are you? I knew there was something fishy about this. I guess I can still try with her human half.